Okay, so we'll just show you a couple more panels and a little bit of color because Osmo comes with a number of earth pigment colors. This is a pretty famous piece of wood around here.
Yeah, that's looks like end grain old growth fir.
Yeah, it sure is, and of course we use a lot of it in furniture. We want this stuff to be just as pristine as we can get it, and especially if we're dealing with windfall salvaged wood, which I deal with a lot of. So here we are, same technique, across the grain, and I'm putting it on with pretty good pressure.
Okay.
That's another thing. We have to get away from thinking about slathering oil on and just kind of laying it on.
Yeah.
I'm using pressure, and if I come to an area that's a little bit dry, then I'm actually pressing down on my white pad,
Okay.
and I'm oozing that material out, the Osmo out.
Oh.
But my goal now, again, I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at the light,
Yep.
and it looks pretty good. I can just see a few areas where it looks very even. Now what I'm going to do is just leave it for a minute, and then
Okay.
I'll come back and I'll give it a final wipe with the grain.
I see. Okay.
And that's it.
You know that this polishing technique that you're using, I can't really see any swirls in there. It's finished very nicely. It's a very smooth finish on that. Now, what did you sand this down to?
This fir was sanded to 150.
Okay.
It was sanded well, and again, the regime is that starting at 100, 120, 150, and every grit sanded with vac, and then touched up with solvent before I move on.
Okay.
So, and always with a low light so I can see it.
I can see that,
Yeah.
how that light, having a low light here, is a big benefit when you're doing this kind of finishing. You can actually see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, in this case we've got something like a small box. Someone's going to have that up close. It'll be on a desk.
Yeah.
It'll be in maybe a hallway table. It'll be close to their vision, so we need to
Now
have it clean.
these white pads, you mentioned they're from the automotive industry.
Mhm.
Where would somebody get something like this?
Well, I have them, and I sell them now, but people like JB Automotive
Okay.
would be a good source
Okay,
of them.
so like a...
Yeah, they're a couple of dollars, but they're a tremendous
Okay.
product. And we've only used one little tiny
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
And what we'll do, if we're going to come back and do another coat tomorrow on
Yep,
these,
yep.
what I'll do is just put these in a Ziploc bag
Oh.
and I'll reuse them. Because, as you can see, I've only used a tiny amount
You
of
only
that,
used less
right?
than half of that pad.
And this will stay liquid for a couple of days,
Okay.
and then I'll be able to reuse it.
Hmm.
We don't throw anything out around
No,
here.
yeah. Well, that's all the conservation.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I've done there. Now, everything we saw here was first coats.
That's a beautiful
like the way
finish.
that looks.
Yeah.
We've got our other two. Let's just have a look at the Arbutus one, and that one's looking really, really cool. Now, if I was putting this on at the beginning, and I have instructions on this, and I ended up with too much material on it, I can definitely take a small piece of rag, and I can give it a little wipe. But we did this about 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
And what I want to show you is that if I put on the right amount of material, I gave it a pretty good wipe, and we're seeing almost
nothing. Very
material
slight,
come off.
slight haze on that cloth.
So feel that board, Colin, and tell me how you perceive it in terms of it, whether it's dry.
beautiful. Yeah, it doesn't feel wet at all.
It doesn't
it feels,
feel wet.
Yeah.
No. So in a shop environment, we have people that'll finish in an area close to machinery. They just do what we're doing now. They tent
Yeah.
the piece
Okay.
with 2 mil,
Yeah.
and then they start up the bandsaw and away they go.
Well.
It doesn't pick up.
Yep.
It doesn't pick up dust. Okay, I'm going to do one more little thing, and that is just show you a couple of earth pigments. Osmo comes in about 15 colors.
Now, when you say earth pigments, in woodworking typically we're used to dyes and stains, and stains are typically ground up dirt. So when you say earth pigments, is this like a stain, a ground up dirt kind
Exactly.
of? Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
And actually it's interesting because with Osmo, you would be able to use any oil-based stain of your choice underneath it.
Okay.
So any brand you want to use, as long as it's oil-based. My one proviso is that you need to let it dry, really dry well. So if you pick something like a Minwax stain, off the shelf kind of stain, a color that you like, that's all well and good. Leave it for about 3 days before you put the top coats on.
Okay.
It needs extra time to dry.
Now, what about if you wanted to dye the wood with some of the dyes that are available, and they're of course waterborne? Can you use those, let them dye or dry, and then just, because they'll raise the grain a little bit and you probably need to scrape it or a light sanding then, so you can do that?
I didn't mention dyes, but totally any kind of dye, water-based aniline dyes, things that we used to mix with alcohol.
So it'll go with anything?
It'll go with anything, and we could use a combination of dyes and then an oil-based stain, and then we could put Osmo on.
Oh.
The only thing we can't do is we can't seal the wood before we put Osmo on. We have to have, we can't have a varnish or a polyurethane.
Okay, or a shellac or something.
We could actually have a shellac, but it would be a spit coat of shellac. 1 to 1.5 pound cut of shellac as a spit coat. And I do use that in areas like this. This is a good example of an area we're working with a really nasty piece of
a burl. It's like a burl there.
It's kind of a burl, the end of the world on this tree. But it's a hunk of bark. And of course, getting finish in that area consistently, getting a build is difficult. So we can use shellac in an area like that. We could also use it on wood like spalted woods, for example.
I see.
That's an example of a bed,
beautiful
piece of a bed that I was doing in spalted maple. I love the fact that we get a build, because we've got the wax in it, we get a build in a couple of coats. And a lot of us used to struggle. We'd put 8 or 9 or 10 coats of 3-part oil varnish on. But in this case, because the wax is in there, we get a build in a couple of coats.
Wow.
And that's one of the real advantages, is your time. You're saving your time.
That's a beautiful finish on that.
Thank you.
That's hard to get on a spalted wood sometimes.
All right, now the last one we've got in clear, because we're on Mount Tomie, and just for fun, Mount Tomie, as many of you would know, no, actually not too many people would know, but it's full of these critters.
Little rabbit.
So we've discovered a rabbit, you and I.
A rabbit in the wood.
One of my grandkids will enjoy that. Okay, I'm going to get out a little jug of the ebony, and we play around with a lot of different finishes. This is wire brushed, flat sawn fir.
So when you say wire brushed, would you do that by hand, or would you use a machine to wire brush that?
Actually, I do small pieces by hand with nothing more than this guy. And looks like I paid $1 for it. But it's working fine. So I'm just taking away a little bit of the summer wood. And I'm going to leave the other wood sitting there and create a little bit of texture. On big surfaces, though, when I do benches and other pieces like that, I do use a wire wheel. Just a very small wire wheel, nothing high-tech at all. Very, very quickly. And then all I'm doing is I'm putting in a little bit of this earth pigment. In this case we've got white. In this case we have ebony, which is the can I have here. And we put that on very, very thinly, again with the white pad. And then we'll leave that for a few minutes and we'll decide how much color we want to see. If we want a look with a little bit less color, I'll use a little bit of clean white pad or a little bit of burlap. And I'll take a little bit of color off. After we've left that overnight, I'll put 1 coat of the clear on, and we're good to go. So that's basically that. But let me show you the black. Comes in about 15 colors and does a beautiful job. We've got a piece of Gary oak here, and I'm going to take the other end of the pad. So this is a piece of Gary oak. It's going to be a cleat for one of these little...
I see. A foot type of thing,
And then we're looking at the edge of the ebonized pieces now. And so I'm going to put this on. I'll just go to the lid. And again, we're seeing semi-transparent color go on. And what I need to do is same way, I need to put it on with a little bit of pressure.
Just going to move that can so we can see that light through there.
Super. I don't want to leave material on top, just laying there.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be doing this the same way with a little bit of pressure, and I could just leave that for a minute. And now when we look at it, we can see the wax layers in
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a buildup
See
there.
a little bit of streaking
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll just flip that over. I would normally leave that for maybe 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
And then come back, and with the clean side of the white pad, I'm going to give it a little wipe.
Yep.
And what I want to see is I want to see a real nice even sheen. Now the thing that's quite different about this is that if I were doing this, Colin, with an ordinary stain, I wouldn't get any kind of sheen. I would have a very dull looking surface. I'd have the color, but it would be very, very dull. And when you look at that, you can see there's a sheen building there already.
Yeah, you can see that.
And that's a pretty rough piece. It's going to be on the bottom.
Yeah.
I didn't spend a lot of time sanding it.
You know, I'm loving the finish. I don't like a high gloss. Sometimes a high gloss is nice, but it's just my preference. I like almost a satin or a matte finish, and I'm actually seeing that. Now, is Osmo, when you're doing the clear finish on Osmo, can you get like a high gloss, a matte, and a satin? Does it come in different grades like some of the varnishes do, or is it all in the technique of how you apply it?
It's all in the technique. I guess I like simple things, so there's only one sheen.
Okay, perfect.
And it's called satin.
Yeah.
That means that if I put 2 coats on reasonably sanded wood,
Yeah.
I'll get a satin
Okay.
sheen. It does have a sheen right in there. I think it's a true satin. It's not semi-gloss, it's not matte, it's right in between.
Right.
Really great surface that way. But it's in the technique. If I wanted to get a higher sheen,
Yes.
I would have to put more work into it.
Okay.
And the work that I've got to put into it now is I need to do a little bit of a braiding between coats. One thing about Osmo, it doesn't raise the grain. You don't have to sand between coats.
Oh, you don't sand between coats at all?
No, no. If you were, I would recommend that if you were doing a coat and then let's say you waited a week,
Yes.
I would recommend using a little bit of maybe 320 just to give the surface a little bit of a scuff.
Okay.
But if you're doing it one day and then the next day,
Okay.
no need to touch it at all. Obviously, run your hand over it if you've got some dust or particles that you want to remove.
Yeah, yeah.
Then that's a different thing. But in and of itself, you don't have to sand in between. So how do we get more sheen? Well, the king of sheen is a fellow named Joseph Jelena up in Duncan. And he basically does the 2 coats. Then he goes to a very light sanding with 400 grit.
Okay.
Then he puts on another coat.
Yeah.
But the 3rd coat that he puts on is so thin and it's applied with a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And then he does sanding, very light sanding with 600 grit. Then he puts on another coat.
Oh.
In other words, to get that extra sheen, you've got to put in extra work.
A lot of extra work.
But he has pieces that look almost what I would call piano grade. You can actually see a very nice piece of his in a public space at Venturi Schulze Winery up in Mill Bay.
Oh.
And it's an area, go up there and look at some nice wood, and it's an arbutus reception area. Buy some good wine from them, and you'll see a very, very shiny Osmo application.
That's we'll have to check that out. You triggered me on one thing, that you don't sand between coats. So with some of these products, if something got worn, if for example you had a cupboard door that part of it got worn, do you not sand that down and refinish it, or what do you do with a product that's say a year old, like with some types of finish you can just coat right over top of them? How does this have to be sanded off and redone? How does that work?
No, it's a very forgiving thing that way. What we do with the product, if we want to rejuvenate a surface, we'll use another type of pad.
Okay.
Instead of using sandpaper,
Yeah.
the best product that we've found is another Scotch-Brite pad, and in this case it's maroon in color. And that would be equivalent to about 320 to 400 in ASA grit,
Okay.
sandpaper grit. So we're going to use that, and all we're going to do is we're going to just try and key the surface. We're going to take the sheen off the surface.
Etch it a little bit.
Exactly. And then we'll tack that off. It'll produce a white fine dust.
Right.
We will tack that off, Colin, and then we'll put on another thin coat with
Just
the
like
white
that.
pad. Just like that.
That's easy.
And it transfers over to the way the product was made. In Europe, they don't like applying products and then sanding. Sanding creates a lot
Dust,
a lot of energy, a lot
yeah,
of dust.
Yeah, a lot of problems.
And so what we do is we have a big floor that needs to be recoated.
Right.
We use a big 16-inch diameter Scotch-Brite pad.
Yeah.
We put that on a low-speed floor buffer,
Yeah.
about 175 RPM, and that goes over the whole floor. Again, the same thing. We vacuum it, we tack it, and we put another coat on.
Okay.
So the idea there is that from a sanding point of view, it's not made to be sanded right
Okay.
off. It's made to be rejuvenated very, very quickly, and again with very little material.
It's a little bit like a lacquer in that sense, that it kind of, with the first coat, the second top coat sort of blends into the lower coats, into the bottom coats.
I guess, yeah, lacquer, it's a chemically activated thing.
Yeah.
In this case, we're dealing with, again, natural
organic,
products.
almost. Yeah.
So what we're getting out of this product, I think, is a big savings in time. People are really using it for a lot of different things. We have chair makers, furniture makers, people doing turnings, people doing food-safe products.
Yep.
And part of this is getting your clients, getting people, real people, interested in what it is, the environmental
Yes.
message. And for us woodworkers, what we get out of it is a big savings in time.
Yeah, well, even I don't mind investing the time. I just like to get the results in the end, and I can see now the results you're getting with this product are just outstanding, and with a surprisingly little cost and little effort.
Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for showing.
Great for having us.
Okay.
I want to thank Phil Macon from Framework Services for spending the time with us, showing us all of the detail of how to use this OSMO product in finishing our woodworking projects. I know for me, it's been an absolute game changer in how I'm going to be finishing my projects in the future, and it might be something you want to investigate as well. Also, as a reminder, we have a number of great videos coming up in the very near future, so I encourage you to subscribe to this channel so that you get an email, so you're informed when we upload these videos, so that we can share them with you. And for now, I want to leave you with some images of Phil Macon from Framework Services and some of the woodworking projects that he's done. Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.